let's talk a little bit just about physician reimbursement in 2025. What happened, what was threatened, and what's likely coming in 2026. And I want to start by saying is I honestly have no idea. Welcome to the Developing Doctor Podcast. I'm Dr. Ben, your podcast host. I'm also a pediatric cardiologist and a physician development coach. And this is the podcast and the place where we are bringing the heart and soul back to medicine, and growth and development never stop. In this episode, I'm going to reflect back on 2025 and specifically think about what some of the things that happened in 2025 meant for physicians, what the year taught us, and potentially what can we expect in 2026. And before I dive into that, I just want to start with a disclaimer that I love my job, or more accurately, I love my career. And most days, I love my job. Just like anything else, there are days that are rough and I think, am I doing the right thing? Is it time to just, take down the shingle and do something else? But I feel so fortunate and blessed to be a physician. I'm so thankful to have the career and the life that I do. And I have the ability to, over time, to intentionally build a career as a physician that lets me wear different hats throughout the week. That's one of the great advantages of being in academic medicine, is we really have a lot of flexibility in terms of how we practice and how we work from day to day and week to week. I'm a clinician, I'm an educator, I'm a division director, so I have a leadership position, and I've got the side gig where I'm a physician coach. And that diversity brings meaning and reminds me that medicine isn't just one thing. There's more than one way to use your MD. And graduating from medical school really opens up this whole world of possibilities that many people just aren't aware of when they first apply to medical school and get their MD. Most people picture physicians as someone who wears a white coat and sees patients in clinic, and that is exactly what most physicians do, but in reality, there's a whole host of other things that physicians can do. And when I reflect on my roles, my favorite by far is being a learning community director in the Carver College of Medicine at the University of Iowa. In that role, I'm fortunate to meet medical students on their very first day of orientation. They walk in that door fresh out of summer vacation, bright-eyed and idealistic, and fully aware of why they went into medicine, and completely oblivious to what is about to hit them and what they're about to face. And I get to sit down with them in that pure, purpose-driven clarity when they're just so pumped to be entering medical school and to be having their white coat ceremony at the end of the orientation week. They're just so excited. And then later in the week and throughout the year, I'm also in administrative meetings as a division director. And in that role, I face the complexities of modern healthcare head on. We talk about just declining reimbursement and ways to improve productivity and the bottom line. We talk about workforce shortages. We talk about how fragile our budget is and how small things can really upset the cart, so to speak. And I become aware of a system that's really held together by spreadsheets and duct tape and a lot of hope. And then I pivot, and as a physician coach, I sit across from physicians who are exhausted. They are just tired. They've been impacted by moral injury. They deal with prior authorizations. They're tired of dealing with just the never-ending onslaught of messages and documentation that hits their electronic health record inboxes or the Epic in basket. They talk about the collapsing boundaries and how with technology it's easier to reach them even in their off time. And they talk about a system that often cares more about margin and the bottom line than it does about meaning and honoring the purpose about why all of them went to medical school in the first place. And in that role, I get to help them figure out what's next in that career, whether that means a new job, a new role in the same institution, or a completely new identity and rethinking what it means to be a physician to them. And sometimes that means really starting a new life completely sort of from scratch. So when I think about all these roles, I find myself living really inside what is just a powerful paradox. How can medicine be both deeply beautiful and meaningful and full of people who hold these values so tightly and so dearly, and deeply broken as a system at the same time? How can I tell a medical student, this is worth it? This is an amazing career and you have so many opportunities in front of you, while also supporting mid-career physicians who are ready to walk away from the very real struggles that we face as we practice medicine. But here's what 2025 taught me, and what I believe many of us learned this year, which is that two opposing truths can be real at the same time. And learning how to recognize and honor both of those truths is how we honor ourselves and honor the reasons that we went to medical school and entered healthcare and pursued this really difficult path. And although this is true in healthcare, I think it's also true in society in general. So hopefully there's a little lesson here for everyone, even if you're not a physician or a healthcare provider. And this perspective of being able to honor two things at once has shaped the way that I navigated 2025, and it really has influenced how I'm thinking about 2026. So keep listening for my review of 2025, specific to physicians, what this year revealed specifically about reimbursement, about patient complexity, about our workforce, and how AI impacted us over the past year, and how I think it's going to impact us in the future, and how we can think about these issues that are going to be persistent in the coming years so that we can move forward with clarity and with hope. So let's talk a little bit just about physician reimbursement in 2025. What happened, what was threatened, and what's likely coming in 2026. And I want to start by saying is I honestly have no idea what's going to come in 2026. I think it's very clear that we have leaders and in all parties. This is not meant to be blaming either political party who really don't have a solution for the crisis that is hitting healthcare. But if you felt like you were getting paid less in the past year, you were not imagining it. This was one of the most consequential years for physician and healthcare reimbursement in over a decade. So in 2025, the Medicare physician fee schedule included a 2.8 to 9.3% cut in the conversion factor. Now, that wasn't a surprise. Congress just really allowed a temporary 2024 boost to expire, and CMS implemented mandatory budget neutrality adjustments. What that means is that physicians were paid less in 2025 for the same work that they did in 2024. And we all know that 2025 was a year where inflation was still persistent in our economy, so we got paid less and things costed more. Kind of a double whammy. What was threatened was a 4% across the board Medicare cut as well. Because of the federal pay-as-you-go rules, the 2025 budget deal triggered potential 4% Medicare cuts across all providers starting in 2026 unless Congress intervened. That would have been devastating. And I can tell you that there was panic at our institution, and I know that there was panic nationwide about how this was going to impact our ability to deliver healthcare in a way that continued to meet the needs of our patients, but also supported the people working in the healthcare system. But Congress waived those cuts, continuing the long tradition of pay-as-you-go delays. So what was the worst case scenario? If the pay-go had kicked in and the conversion factor kept drifting downward, physicians would face the current 3% cut plus an additional 4%, plus a further erosion of just our spending ability and ability to meet the basic needs of our lifestyles and our families, and the mounting burden of student debt for many people due to inflation. That is the Medicare cliff that physician advocacy organizations fought hard to avoid. So what is the most likely path forward? Are we still facing this really steep Medicare cliff? Well, thanks to late 2025 legislation, the conversion factor does get a small increase in 2026. And future updates may be partially linked to inflation through the Medicare Economic Index. It's not perfect, but it is a step towards stability and a little more predictability when we think about physician income, but also the income that hospitals and healthcare systems can expect to come in so that they can plan their budgets and plan reinvestments into their healthcare systems to provide better quality care to patients. So here are two truths about physician income that I think are important to think about. Truth number one, physician reimbursement has eroded 26 to 33% in real dollars since 2021. That is a staggering amount. Truth number two, and the other side of the coin, is that physicians still have some of the highest earning potential of any profession in the country. So talking about this is sort of like talking out both sides of your mouth. This matters for many clinicians who are exploring autonomy or financial independence, which is a topic that I cover in coaching and in my posts on my blog. So check it out at thedevelopingdoctor.com and go to our blog to learn a little bit more. Truth number two is that physicians still have some of the highest earning potential of any profession in the country. And this is important to think about, especially for many physicians or clinicians who are thinking about autonomy and ways to be less dependent on their clinical income because of just the unpredictable nature of our current healthcare and political environment. And for those who are considering financial independence with the ability to maybe retire early if needed. So this is a topic that I cover in my coaching and in many of my blog posts. So check it out at thedevelopingdoctor.com if you're interested in learning more. The truth is that reimbursement will likely remain flat, but many individual physicians and as individuals, we can still build financial stability if we carefully set boundaries on how we spend our money, if we control how we live our lives and think about what our lifestyle wants and needs are, if we save strategically, if we develop other ways to diversify our income stream. So thinking about a side gig or investing wisely and reflecting on the non-clinical skills that we have that are valuable in the healthcare setting, but also outside of the healthcare setting. Again, just building in some flexibility so we're not completely dependent upon a system that just feels a little bit fragile. So, in this realm, both things can be true. So, we can be facing a really difficult financial situation in healthcare and as healthcare providers, we're dependent on our clinical incomes. And we still also make a substantial amount of money compared to the rest of the population and the rest of the people living in the United States, so that we do have some ability to protect that income stream and leverage our skill set to broaden the income streams that we rely on for our lifestyles. Issue number two is just thinking about the increasing complexity of patients that walk into our clinics and hospitals every day. I think this is something that every clinician, no matter what your subspecialty is, has felt just in their bones and just sitting in exam rooms and speaking with patients. This isn't just an observation. There's good data to show this. So studies continue to show that over 50% of US adults live with at least two chronic conditions. And multimorbidity, having multiple chronic conditions, is rising in every age group, including pediatrics, where we're seeing pediatric onset chronic healthcare conditions like hypertension and obesity and type 2 diabetes that are directly related to our lifestyles and the modern society that we live in. Mental health struggles and social determinants of health continue to complicate nearly every visit, particularly in the adult world, although we notice this in pediatrics and in adolescent medicine very clearly as well. To top it all off, patients are coming to our clinics and our hospitals with more information and more misinformation than ever, which makes navigating difficult decisions different than it was in the past. It's wonderful that patients are there, are well informed, and they have good information and they want to be involved in the decision making. That shared decision making model is so important in modern healthcare, and I think in reinvigorating the trust that used to exist in a physician-patient relationship. But what all this means is that a 15-minute appointment, which is what many family practice physicians, primary care providers have allotted, not because they choose those time slot lengths, but because that's what their template, which is dictated by administrators, allows, feels and is impossible. It is impossible to deliver good care in 15 minutes to a well person, let alone to a medically complex person with multiple issues that need to be dealt with at the same time. So amid all of this complexity, there is a little bit of good news. So 2025 gave us one of the most exciting success stories in chronic disease care, which is GLP-1 medications. Many of you know these as the weight loss medications or obesity treatments. But there are trials that show that medications like semaglutide lead to significant improvement in chronic conditions. So the SELECT trial, which was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, showed that semaglutide or Ozempic or Wegovy, depending upon what it's marketed for, led to sustained 10 to 15% weight loss and reduced major cardiovascular events by 20% in non-diabetic patients with cardiovascular disease. 20%. That's amazing. That's extraordinary. Now, this doesn't fix all metabolic disease. It doesn't replace lifestyle changes. It doesn't solve access to healthcare or cost, but it's a clear reminder that we are practicing in an era where some chronic diseases are more treatable than ever. So again, if you'd like to read more about how physicians can balance some of this really heavy stuff that we encounter in patient sessions with hope, check out my post on The Developing Doctor, the best gift you can give yourself this holiday season, that talks a lot about how you could practice self-care in the middle of this complex healthcare conditions. Issue number 3 is physician and workforce shortages, which has placed a huge strain on our healthcare system. The AAMC projects a shortage of around 86,000 physicians by 2036. This isn't a future problem, it is here. And the shortage is hitting hardest in areas where we badly need healthcare providers as we think about the complexity of the patient population. So, primary care, rural communities, people with mental health care struggles, and critical subspecialties like cardiology, neurology, anesthesia, and emergency medicine. Pediatric subspecialties, which is my world, has faced a decade-long reality that we have decreasing applicants to our fellowship programs, which means that as our workforce ages and retires, we're not having younger physicians replace the people that are retiring. All this means that recruitment has become harder, burnout has driven early retirements have increased because the people that are there are working harder and reach a point where they just can't do it anymore. And some physicians have reduced their FTE to protect their mental health. They just built in margin and said, hey, it is not worth it to get paid more and to work more. I'm going to work less and do what I can in less time and then own some of the time myself. But 2025 also showed us that there are some solutions that can work, and perhaps there's hope to our workforce issues. First is that graduate medical education programs have started to expand. There are new medical schools, residency slots are increasing, and there are targeted federal programs aimed at underserved areas. The second is realizing that physicians don't and can't do this by themselves. When we utilize team-based care properly, not as a cost-cutting substitute, but as a physician-led multidisciplinary team. Team-based care reduces burnout and improves patient outcomes. This has been well researched by the National Academy of Medicine and the American Medical Association. And finally, we can utilize technology. We can continue policy extensions that allow video and audio visits to continue to be reimbursed, which expands access for the rural and underserved populations and addresses many of the access issues that patients face. And finally, we can come up with creative workforce models. So community paramedicine, NP-led urgent cares, pharmacists, and chronic disease management clinics that can help with adjusting medications in patients who need dose adjustments, for example, because of renal failure. All of these physician-supervised models have been shown to increase access without compromising safety and improving patient satisfaction. So both things can be true. The shortage that we face in our physician workforce is real, and we have some tools that have been shown to be able to mitigate this shortage until the next generation of trainees can take the reins. Finally, another thing worth mentioning in 2025 is the emergence of AI use in medicine. This isn't hype anymore, it's actually a reality. 2025 was the year that AI left the stage and walked into the exam room. And two stories show why this matters. First, UCLA published a randomized trial about the use of an ambient scribe. This trial showed that ambient AI as a scribe reduced physician documentation time, it decreased cognitive load, it improved burnout symptoms, and patients reported being able to be more present with their patients. When they turned away from the computer screen and looked at the patient while they were talking, they were actually just able to listen and address their needs in a more patient-centric manner. Another example is Kaiser Permanente's medical group, which evaluated 2.5 million interactions using their AI scribe tool, and it saved about 15,000 hours of physician time in 1 year. That is a lot of time. That is not time, that's time given back. That's time that physicians spent in their pajamas documenting after their families were already in bed so that they could catch up on the work of the day before they went back the following day and did it all again. So clearly, AI scribes are here to stay, and they're likely improving our ability to care for our patients and care for ourselves at the same time. Now, let's be honest. AI is not perfect. It hallucinates. It struggles if you happen to have an accent. It can miss nuance. And the financial return on investment still isn't clear. So convincing a healthcare system to invest in an AI scribe program, for example, still is a little bit difficult in some places. But this may be the first technology in years that actually makes physicians' lives better, not worse. We all know what was promised with the electronic medical record and the reality that it made our lives harder, not better. So thinking ahead to 2026, what did we learn from 2025? First, as I said, medicine and life can be two things at once. Medicine is harder than ever, and I think there's reason to be more hopeful than ever. Reimbursement is tight, but you can still find ways to build financial independence. Patient complexity is rising, and at the same time, we're seeing breakthroughs with new medications like GLP-1s or SGLT2 inhibitors that change lives. And workforce shortages are real, but they are also tools that may be able to make the mounting load of documentation more manageable. And finally, AI is imperfect, but it may help us give us our time and our humanity back. So as we look towards 2026, here are a few questions that I think are worth asking. One, what is one financial decision that I can make now that my future self will thank me for? Two, what boundary can I set at work that honors both my patients and my humanity? Three, what skill, role, or opportunity am I finally ready to explore to maybe diversify my income streams or think about how I can use the skills I developed in medical training differently? And finally, what AI tool or workflow tweak might be able to give me even 20 minutes back a day? You don't have to fix medicine in 2026. That is not the responsibility of any individual physician. But you can build a life and a career that feels sustainable, meaningful, and aligned with the physician and the human that you want to be. You can reclaim those values that drove you to apply to medical school in the first place. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me on the Developing Doctor podcast. And if you like what you heard, you can help us reach more people by subscribing and give us a 5-star review. And to learn more about how we are bringing the heart and soul back to medicine, visit our webpage at thedevelopingdoctor.com. Until then, stay curious. This is Dr. Ben.